So, I'm Cristiano Ventricelli. I work in Moody's digital economy team, which is, we have a core team of experts that works on digital finance, AI, and cyber risk. But actually, we involve more than 150 people regularly on digital finance topics in Moody's, and our aim is to upskill and have everyone ready in the organization when it comes to preparedness on digital finance topics. We are deeply involved in rating activities. We rate digital bonds, we assess tokenized funds, and we are working to broaden the scope of the instruments that we cover in the future. We produce a lot of research to inform market participants on how we see certain developments in the space, and we are becoming technologically ready to connect to the latest infrastructure that our clients are using. This is just a snapshot of the outlook that we published for 2025, and we have some of the messages that we think are more important to take a look at in 2025. But without further ado, let's go into the topic. So before we start, I just want to ask you, because of this title of the session, which is extremely attractive. So how many of you think this is like a Lord of the Rings scenario when there is one digital cash that will rule them all? Nobody. Cool. That was good to know. So we have a similar view in the sense that, as we are seeing here, we think digital cash is a spectrum of instruments that will coexist in the future, and they will all have different use cases, different level of adoptions, and different users and investors. As you can see here, we start by the notion that so far we had commercial bank money dominating the landscape, but we have new instruments coming into the digital cash space, notably CBDCs and stablecoins, because as you can infer here, unbacked cryptocurrencies, we do not really consider them a digital cash option because of the volatility and other aspects that we will mention later. This is what we foresee in terms of usage in the next year. So digital commercial bank money will remain, will keep the lion's share of the digital cash market, but their usage will decline due to the entrance of new players such as stablecoins and CBDCs. As you can see here, it's not something that will happen overnight. It will take time, and there will be different phases, but we do not think that banks will be disintermediated anytime soon. Their role will be complemented by other digital cash instruments, and there will be actually a lot of interconnectedness between banks, central banks, and private companies on the digital money side. Let's talk about stablecoins. So we as Moody's, we talk about what could go wrong, and that's why we want to focus on the risk aspects of stablecoins. So I guess all of you are familiar with what a stablecoin is. It's basically a cryptocurrency whose price is supposed to be pegged to another asset, which in most cases is either US dollars in cash or instruments denominated in US dollars that are called cash equivalents, such as US treasuries. We have identified several aspects that could, produce risk on the stablecoin side. Let's talk about, well, on collateral, I will expand that later, so maybe we can leave it aside for a moment. But we can definitely talk about the technology. Stablecoins are predominantly issued on permissionless blockchains, and the underlying blockchains, of course, plays a role because the ability for holders to transact stablecoins depend on the availability of the underlying blockchain, and we need the blockchain to work as intended to avoid outages and malfunctioning that could cause bottlenecks and issues where holders of stablecoins cannot move their funds. Issues on the technology side work across all the technology stacks. So you can have blockchain outages, you can have hacks at the smart contract level, you can have failures in the oracles. I mean, the technology stack is quite deep, and in every piece, we can potentially identify risks. Last but not least, I want to mention track record. So the track record of the technology used in something that is sometimes a little overlooked, but is extremely important, especially when it comes to institutional usage. We have risk on the operation and counterparty side because, of course, stablecoins have the super difficult task of bridging something that is located on-chain, which is the token, with something that is located off-chain, which is the underlying asset. So we have counterparty risk, first of all, and I guess all of you remember what happened in 2023 with Silicon Valley Bank and Circle. We have governance and risk management, and we have transparency risk, and I'm alluding, for instance, to the audit and the attestation of the reserves of stablecoins. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have transaction structure elements such as the asset regulation, the jurisdiction, and the regulation, which is something that we have discussing for quite a long time. Right now in Europe, we have the first established regulatory regime for stablecoins, which is MiCA. But other jurisdictions are catching up. We are seeing a lot of activity in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan as well. And now with the new administration, US is also quite well positioned to agree on a stablecoin bill in 2025, which, again, we still don't know how it will look like. There are some indications that could be not that different from MiCA for the time being, but again, time will tell. Let's talk about stablecoin collateral. So it looks like a trivial notion, but it's actually not. And I want to mention two facts that we are observing in the market. So stablecoins originally had a portfolio which was composed of cash in bank accounts and government debt like US Treasuries with short-dated maturity. Most stablecoin issuers have maturity up to 90 days. Now we are seeing two trends. The first is stablecoins do not keep necessarily all the assets in off-chain instruments, but they replace a portion of them with on-chain instruments as well. What I'm referring to is many stablecoins are trying to shift their backing assets from money market instruments to tokenized money market funds. And even though the underlying portfolio is the same, there could be some implications in terms of risk in holding a tokenized money market funds rather than the underlying US Treasuries. The second point I want to mention is, and this is particularly pertinent for the DeFi environment, but it will have repercussion on the traditional market as well. Some stablecoins are structured in a way that combines trading positions that should result in a delta neutral exposure. So what investors say and look at is the peg, but the peg is the result of the behavior of the underlying portfolio. And the underlying portfolio is, again, a structured portfolio which could have several risks that need careful assessment, especially when you combine positions that are supposed to offset each other. All of this to say, stablecoins are supposed to be liquid, which means they should be available for redemption all the time. It hasn't necessarily happened in the past all the time, and that's why we see stablecoins as an instrument that has risks connected to the ability for the counterparty to process redemption, but it's not only that, it's also the quality of the underlying portfolio and the way it is managed. Tokenized bank deposits. So tokenized bank deposits are exactly what you would expect, a version of your traditional bank deposit issued on the blockchain. And again, this is quite early days to talk about tokenized bank deposit because we haven't seen a lot of examples in the market, even though many players are working on that. And they are supposed to bring efficiency at the back-end level of transaction, especially with reference to faster settlement made possible by the blockchain and programmability. And when I talk about programmability, I mean the ability of the bank to move money based on certain conditions, such as, did I receive the invoice that I was waiting for? Did I receive the confirmation from the party A that the transaction is coming? Okay, now I can release the money. And all of this is made automatically, managed by smart contracts. This is why tokenized deposits could, bring benefits to the table for banks. We have, on the challenge side, we have elements like, the first one is the technology. So tokenized bank deposits, for the time being, will probably most likely be issued on permissioned blockchains rather than permissionless ones because of several reasons, first being regulation and second being security. But it's not only that, it's also the element of faster settlement and ability to move money seamlessly, which is good on the one side, but it could also mean that the velocity of deposits increases compared to what banks are used to see. And in certain scenarios, this could amplify distress conditions, not necessarily related to bank runs, but similar scenarios. And this is, of course, something that needs careful assessment. CBDCs, two flavors. First being wholesale CBDC. We see many central banks in the world experimenting with wholesale CBDC. We have seen in Switzerland Project Helvetia. We are seeing here ECB with the wholesale pilot program that had the ability to allow digital bond issuers to settle transaction in wholesale CBDC. And we think wholesale CBDC is an extremely valuable instrument that could fill probably the biggest gap we are seeing in digital finance, which is the lack of digital cash instruments at the settlement level. Because right now, when you issue an instrument on the blockchain, most likely you have to settle the transaction off-chain through traditional banking channels. And this partially defeats the purpose of having a blockchain and a token in the first place. So why wholesale CBDC hold significant promises? The first being the issuer of wholesale CBDC is the central bank itself. And this removes the layer of credit and counterparty risk usually associated with private companies issuing digital cash, such as stablecoin issuers, or banks, which still hold a degree of credit risk. Faster settlement, and again, this is a point that is highly dependent on the technology used. It's still a race to evaluate, but interoperability is the key. Why? Because most likely wholesale CBDCs will be issued on permissioned blockchains, but they will have transactions that occur on permissionless ledgers as well. And that's where the coexistence between the two technologies could play a key role. Improve liquidity, and this is related to the ability for instruments like digital bonds to settle in wholesale CBDC. This will in turn improve the ability for people to hold digital bonds or other instruments as collateral, because the mobility could be achieved much more efficiently if you have a digital cash option that you can seamlessly use across the board. All the four elements at the bottom part combined should result in cost reduction that could produce savings across the whole value chain. So wholesale CBDCs are actually something that we are closely monitoring, and we hear it could be a potential game changer when it comes to settlement of tokenized assets across the board. Last but not least, retail CBDCs. So retail CBDCs are supposed to be the fuel of a payment system that is alternative to the banking one we have today. This is probably the main advantage that retail CBDC could bring to the table. So an alternative rail through which payments could be executed without the intermediation of private companies like banks. On top of that, we have other benefits such as financial inclusion and potential implication in terms of monetary policy management. However, retail CBDCs face several obstacles. And again, the first is usually referred to as the privacy issue, which, by the way, I mean, it's a challenge, but it's probably secondary compared to the first one, which is, as I said before, the ability for banks to keep their current role in the financial system. And that's why we are seeing many designs of retail CBDCs having holding limits that is supposed to be a measure to allow banks to keep their bulk of customer deposits and avoid any kind of disruption at the funding level. On the technology side, again, CBDCs are still being experimented on several ledgers, and we still don't know which one will be the preferred way to go. Probably there will be multiple ones, and that will create an additional layer of complexity because of the interoperability across them. But we are seeing, I mean, especially in Europe, a strong push for the development of retail CBDC. So before we wrap up, I just want to come back to the first slide and just, summarize this. So which one will prevail? None. They will probably all coexist, and they will target different segments, different use cases, and different activities. For instance, when it comes to permissionless blockchains, we see stablecoins as the most viable option, whereas central bank digital money and commercial bank money will probably be issued and used on ledgers that have some kind of permissioning. And that alone makes the two, let's say, not directly competing with each other because they have different rails. And it's not only that. What we are seeing from the market is that stablecoins and tokenized bank deposits could be the money that you see at the front end, and what you have in the back end is central bank digital money, which in a way is what we have seen throughout the years. And in that respect, it wouldn't change compared to the traditional structure. So yeah, this is pretty much an overview of how digital cash options can coexist in a world where apparently they are all competing, but they have different use cases and different trade-offs in terms of design and adoption.